Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
Here in episode 1, we want to get to know our hosts. So how did you get started quilting, Tori, and when did it turn into a business?
So I started quilting when I was 9. So I've been quilting for over 20 years. And when I got married, my husband decided to join the army 2 weeks after we got married. Yeah, after we got married. And then I started really diving into quilting after that. If you know anything about the military, we move a lot, and everywhere we move has white walls. So I really dived into quilting to start creating colorful quilts to make our houses feel more like homes.
Yeah, because the base housing or the rentals that you get, a lot of times they do not want you to paint anything. So
Nope.
it's temporary color.
Always temporary. So actually the first quilt I made was my husband didn't want a rainbow. So I told him it's not a rainbow, but it is rainbow colors. So it kind of gives you an idea how bright and colorful it was. So I turned my quilting into a business when after my son was born. And I realized that I wanted to stay home with him, especially because being a military spouse, we're moving a lot, right? And right after he was born, we moved, 3 months after he was born. And then we were going to move again 7 months after that because we were only stationed in, at the time, South Carolina, but we were only there for 7 months. So I am traditionally have an education background. I was a certified teacher in Texas. And so there was enough time to get certified in South Carolina. So I was going to wait till our next duty station to go back to teaching. So one thing I wanted to do was help provide some extra money for us because we had just enough to cover our bills. But if we want to do anything extra, if we had an unexpected expense, I had to try to come up with a way to make a little bit more to help cover that expense or to do anything fun, really. And at the time, or even now still, formula is incredibly expensive. And that's what we had to end up going with. So it was a way to help fund my family in both unexpected expenses and a little bit of fun. Like one thing we did was able to go on a beach trip. Where we just bought a hotel room for 2 nights and we were able to take our kid to see the ocean for the first time, which was really fun. But that's what I started. I started making quilts. And then when we had moved to our next duty station, Arizona, I actually started the process on getting certified as a teacher. And that's when we realized the difference in pay versus daycare for just one child. And I wouldn't be making much at all after that expense was taken out. So I decided to hunker down on my side business and see if I can really make this a credible business. And that's when I decided to also pivot from making quilts to making patterns and selling patterns and workshops. And that is just, I loved it so much. And I built that up to be a pretty good side hustle. But yeah, now I've actually made another pivot as my second kid was born. So I'm more pivoting towards teaching the teacher and I'm doing more of course design. Course design and pattern design is where I'm at right now. So lots of pivoting on my end.
Yeah, but that's awesome because there are those kind of frontline aspects of any industry. And then there's the train the person that's on the front line.
It's very true. Yeah. How did you get started, Andi?
It's my mom's fault. I had done a little bit of sewing and I made a quilt for some friends when I was in my 20s. And then when I was in my mid 30s, my mom, as her retirement project, opened a fabric store. And so that's when I really dove in. And I wanted to see a quilt go from beginning all the way to the end. And so it was kind of frustrating for me to send quilts out to be finished by a long armer.
Okay.
And I actually got a long arm myself just a few months before my daughter was born. So I've kind of
Yay!
grown the business with her along the way too. But I was working full time the whole time as a teacher. So we've got that in common. And so having a long arm and quilting for other people was a great thing to do on those school vacations. So I was able to kind of keep it as a side hustle there. And then I've taught classes over the years, and my mom and I wrote a couple books of quilt patterns. So it's kind of evolved, but I've stayed more on the pattern writing, teaching my own materials end of things. And also long arming. I never made it a full-time job as a long armor because I was always trying to develop my own patterns and my own quilts. And so it's hard to balance doing your own thing with doing things for customers and other people. So I've whittled down my customer list to like my mom and two other people so that I do have time occasionally to get my own projects done. But yeah, so that's where I am right now. I'm still working a quote day job and doing the quilting projects on the weekends and holidays.
That's right. We also have that in common. We have the
Mhm.
same job currently. We are both instructional designers.
Yeah, it's been a really fun back and forth to see how our lives have paralleled, because I was in the military myself, and so I understand that whole lifestyle. And yeah, and then we've both have the teaching in public education kind of format, and now instructional design work as well. So that has been really funny. And I have to tell our audience that the reason I kind of gravitated towards you in that online seminar we were part of was because of your last name that is so similar to my maiden name that I was like, oh my gosh, we must be related somehow back, obviously on
That's
your husband's
right.
side, but
I remember that now. Yes, I remember that.
so maybe someday we can like tour the quilts of the British Isles and we can investigate that
That would be
heritage.
fun. I've always wanted to go to like Scotland and Ireland.
Course design, what's one, that's a topic that we can dive into for many, many future episodes, but one quick tip
Definitely.
that you would give someone if they were thinking about how they wanted to take like their favorite quilt and turn it into a workshop.
Oh, that's a good one. Be very clear on my top tip would definitely be clarity. Be very clear on what you're teaching because you're not technically teaching the pattern. You're not teaching a pattern. You're teaching a technique. You're teaching a block or multiple blocks to create that pattern. So that's something to keep in mind that you're not really teaching your pattern. You're teaching the stepping blocks to create that pattern.
No, that's great. I would think that would apply to any endeavor, is to be clear of the actions, not just some other vague noun in there, but get those action words in there.
So do you have a tip for any long armers out there or those that are thinking of maybe getting their first long arm?
I would say really weigh what what the goal is, and in so many areas people tell you to figure out your why. I knew for me that I wanted the long arm because while I'm creating the quilt top, I'm already thinking of quilting design. So my mind is naturally going to that next step. So I wanted to be able to do that myself. And luckily my spouse is supportive enough and said from the beginning that even if I never had a customer, it was okay. It was going to be an investment for me. So my why for having a long arm was to be able to finish my own quilts. So someone else may see it as a revenue stream, and then they're going to have maybe some different calculations on the type of machine, the expense of it all, the size that they need to be able to accomplish that goal. Whereas someone who just wants to finish their own quilts may be able to get a lower cost, smaller model that still fits their needs. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. But if you get clear on your why, what the ultimate goal is, then that can help you make the decision.
I love your spouse support. That's amazing. I don't know, everybody has that, and that's amazing.
So that brings us to our family. So tell us about your family and how accommodating they are or are not of your quilting time.
So just so the audience knows, we have not planned these answers ahead of time. We are just asking questions and getting to know each other, and for our audience to get to know each other right off the top of our heads. So my family, you heard already, I have two children. One is currently a toddler and one is starting kindergarten in the fall. And we currently we moved last year, and so we moved again out of Arizona. And we also have a dog. So I have a lot of noise running around. I work in the basement. So while we're recording our podcast episodes, you will most likely hear some background noise. Andi says she can't hear anything, and I am surprised because you hear everything that is going on above me. So fingers crossed that we have good background sounds. But you hear running, tapping, laughing, screaming, both good and bad screaming. If you have little kids, how that anybody listening knows how that goes. But my husband is very supportive. He wants to help as much as he can, but he can only do so much. But yeah.
I've been blessed with a supportive family. I just have one daughter, and she is going to be graduating high school in 2024. So we're kind of looking forward to that next phase of parenting. Everybody says it doesn't end when they leave the house, but she is planning on college. So we've got all those big plans going on. So
I think we're both bringing some very unique perspectives from our stages in life. So I think this is going to be a really fun conversation podcast between the two of us and our guests.
Exactly. I think so too. And there are such a wide range of people out there quilting, and we know that it can be a fairly common thing to say, oh, I made this new quilt, I put the blocks together differently than I've ever seen. Maybe someone else would want to do that. So how do I write the pattern? How do I let people know? And that's kind of the advice that we'd like to share with people. So
for sure. And really make it worth your time if that is what you want to do with this hobby. So we are supporting you. If you never want to turn this hobby into a business, we fully support that. But if you want to turn your hobby into a business, we are here to get you started to make a profitable side hustle. And if you want to make it even bigger, that's where we're headed to. So come along for the ride.
I appreciate the other folks in the quilt world who have shared their stories too, because they are so inspiring to know that there's other people out there. And that's what makes it an industry that I think is continuing to grow. I haven't done any specific research here recently, but it's quilting and sewing crafts in general are a huge industry. And it's kind of one of those things that people can complain about the potential recession, slower economic times, and worry that it's not a good time to get into business. But there's always going to be people, at every level of the economic strata. And so there will be people that have the money to do the things and buy your finished objects and all that kind of stuff. So I would tell people not to worry about the outside influences and to definitely pursue your dreams.
For real. And that's what's pulled me towards podcasting. And when Andi actually introduced this idea of starting a podcast, and she read my mind because it had been on my mind for a couple of months of, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? And then he's like, hey, do you want to do a podcast with me? And I was like, yes. So that's one reason why I got pulled towards podcasting, was to help reach a wider audience and to help our industry grow a little bit more and appeal to different people than what we've been typically used to seeing within the quilting world. So I'm really excited about that part.
I know. I'm excited too to partner with you because I've always felt like the youngest one in the room. And so now having you as like my younger sister, younger friend, I'm like, I'm not the youngest one anymore.
No, I tend to be one of the youngest in the room.
I know we're definitely bringing that average age down because everybody, it seems to be the standard answer when you say you're a quilter is somebody will say, "Oh, my grandma quilts," and I'm like,
Yes.
I'm not a grandma yet.
And share your quilting. We love to see the new quilts, the brand new quilts, the first quilts, the messes and the accomplishments and the works of art that you're hiding.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things is to teach a beginner class because there's some people that they just obsess about making it perfect, and then there's others that just embrace the beginnerness of things that wonky seams and points that never match and things that skew all over the place, and they're just happy they finished it. And I think that's a great attitude, is just dive in. You're learning something new. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but every time it gets a little bit better, a little bit easier.
We've all been there. And especially with business, make mistakes along the way, try stuff, experiment, see what you like, and give it a good try.
Yeah, and I don't know which guru, over the years said you need to fail faster. You need to get all those no's out of the way before you can get that yes, and find the one thing that hits it off with the audience. Because you always hear about that one spectacular pattern that everybody's making, but then how many other dozens of patterns has that person put out into the marketplace that sold 2 copies to their mom and their grandma?
Yeah, for real. Like the snowflake pattern a couple years ago. I still subscribe to her newsletter. I love seeing her updates. Modern Handcraft, I
Probably.
believe, was the snowflake quilt that everybody was making, and they're still making it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful modern designed snowflake.
Mm-hmm. Is it the
And it
one
just
that
hit
comes off
home.
the corner of the quilt?
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
one.
love that one. I
It could
love
be a
that one.
two-color quilt. She did
Mm-hmm.
a cool like pieced background option for it. And then there's the other one. I think it's the exploding star.
Yes, the
Yeah,
exploding
or not
heart
heart.
by
Heart.
the heart by Slice of Pie.
Yes, by Slice of Pie. And she's an amazing human being. Did you see her support of another designer who wanted to create a pizza version of like an exploding heart design? That was amazing to see them collaborate and her encouragement of this other designer to help her create this exploding pizza.
Mm-hmm.
That was amazing to see.
The other thing I appreciate in the quilt pattern design world is the protectiveness that people are saying, you may want to look into this sketchy website that may be stealing your designs, because I recognize your name, I know these other people's names, and so those messages get out. And so we do at some point we'll want to have a discussion about copyright, because that's a hot topic, and there's some good resources out there in the
I
quilt
wonder
world.
one of my dream interviews would be with Elizabeth Townsend Gard. I think she
Yes.
would be so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, the Just Wanna Quilt.
Yes. She's Just Wanna Quilt, and she does have a podcast. So if you're listening to this and you hear Just Wanna Quilt, look that up. She has a copyright um for the quilting industry or craft industry podcast specifically for us. And it's interesting to listen to. She's got some amazing guests and some really interesting conversations. So yeah, she's definitely one to listen to if you're going
Yeah,
to
for
business.
sure. You learn so much about quilting, about copyright, because she's coming at it from a lawyer perspective, but she also is a quilter herself, so she wants to explore, different techniques and learn new things along the way. And yeah, she's just really interesting.
All right, we're
So,
getting off on tangents here, but let's go ahead. Do you have
which
any
we
other
probably
questions?
will do.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think this is great. We're a discussion-based podcast, so come along for our discussion. So do you want, I would love to do our rapid fire questions. Are you ready for those?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna make you go first. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, big
Well,
eyes. All right, Andi, rapid fire question number one. What is your favorite color?
blue, if you couldn't figure it out from True Blue Quilts. Yeah, that's always been my favorite color. So it was a very obvious choice. And I do love the various shades of blue that you can play with, from the calming seascape shades to the really intense bright blues and the darker navy blues. It's fun. What about you? What colors do you gravitate towards when you're quilting?
I'm more specific on turquoise. I have a really high sensitivity to sight. I used to get optic migraines, but since I
Mm,
had my first kid, they kind of went away. I say kind of because I still get overstimulated, but I'm very particular about my color choices because of that. And
mm.
I really stick with like turquoise and what goes well with turquoise. But I also love contrasting colors. So right now I'm really into seeing that contrast between turquoise and like burnt orange.
I just use that color combination in a quilt. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like loving that right now.
Question number two, Tori, do you have other hobbies besides quilting?
No, not currently. Well, I kind of want to speak on this just a little bit, maybe in a different episode, but right now I'm kind of a little burnt out with quilting. And I think it's an important topic to breach and again for a later episode, but I have a lot of projects in mind. I've got a lot of things started and I keep it in the back burner. I have my sewing machine if right next to me,
Mm,
right here. And it's a source of comfort right now, but not necessarily anything I'm creating right now. But right now, I'm just kind of trying to keep up with my two kids and my job and my side hustle.
yes, yes, that definitely is a full plate. Um,
Yeah, so I guess my only hobby at the moment is writing. I've been doing a
mm,
lot of blog writing, newsletter writing, and I'm writing a book. So that's all what I'm doing right now is mostly, yeah, I guess I could say writing.
awesome. That's exciting.
Do
Um,
you have any side hobby?
my kind of the hobby that stays the most consistent in my life is reading. So hearing you say you're writing a book is exciting because I always have a stack of books um, at the side of my bed. So yeah, that's kind of my hobby. I do other textile crafts, I guess, fiber arts. I cross-stitched quite a bit as a kid, and I dabbled with crochet, and then I learned to knit because as I said, my mom had a fabric store, but it was fabric and yarn. So I learned both quilting and knitting around the same time. So I don't do a lot of handwork when I quilt because it's easier for me to grab a knitting project to take
Yeah,
somewhere if
I
I'm,
can't hand quilt with two kids. The needles just,
you know.
nope, not yet. Even the
Yeah.
older.
Yep. And those memes about you used my quilting scissors, my fabric scissors for, and that would be
Oh,
terrible
my
if you
oldest
had a
knows.
hand project on the couch in the family room. The kids would go
Yeah.
crazy.
He knows like I have a special here, I'll show it. It has a special colored scissors.
Mm-hmm.
There you can see these are in particular stay in my crafting area. They do not leave, and he knows, like, do not touch those.
Yep. Yep. I've
Yeah.
got a talking about scissors, that classic silver Ginger set, the large size. Those are my batting scissors mainly for my long arm, but those
Okay.
are fabric scissors. And one day I saw a pair of silver scissors in my daughter's bathroom. I'm thinking, what the heck are you doing with my good scissor? And
Oh
I had to double check because she's told me several times, because every little while I freak out when I see, and she's like, no, mom, I have my own pair. It's okay. Okay, good. My quilting scissors are still in their normal place. So you're off the hook.
no, that's funny. I feel like I would do the same thing.
Yep. Okay. So a couple more rapid fire questions. Yardage or pre-cuts?
Yardage. I have some pre-cuts and some of them I think are very beautiful, but like I for some reason love to have extra. Like I love having extra. And I get anxiety thinking that I have a limited set and can never get any more. So I'm like, yardage. full yardage.
Yeah.
What about you, Andi?
Back quarters are about the only pre-cut that I think is really useful. I mean, I love jelly rolls and I love to design with 2.5-inch strips, but I have to cut my own because getting them in the set from the fabric collection it doesn't have enough range, or, I need twice as many of the dark strips as I do the other ones, and they're not packaged that way in the collection. So yeah, I don't
You like to pick and choose which ones you
I
want
have to make my own pre-cut set if I'm going to work that way. So yeah, no, not in the traditional sense.
That's interesting. I can't wait to see our guest answers on those. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Our favorite notion. What's your favorite notion?
I guess I'd have to say the add a quarter ruler.
Yeah.
I love that and most people encounter that when they are doing foundation paper piecing, but I've started grabbing mine when I have to trim half square triangles or corners off of flying geese and stuff. It's so handy. So I'm going to say that's my favorite notion today.
Interesting. My first one that comes to mind is my glass head pins. I love those. They're like small enough, but really sharp, and they're long enough to really get, enough fabric. And then you can also iron on top of them, which I love. So I don't have to worry about that. But I do have to be very careful about sewing over them. I'm well, I shouldn't say very, but usually I'm very good about pulling out the needles before I sew, because I'm not one that wants to watch it break. It always startles me way too badly.
Yeah,
it gives me anxiety to sew over me.
Yep. Flying pieces of metal is never a good thing. So be careful with those pins. But yes, I agree. I love those glass head pins as well. And our last question, who is inspiring you right now?
I'm having trouble choosing. You go first.
Okay, well, I will explain how I narrowed this down because there's so many options, but the newest podcast I just tuned into is Bonnie Christine. She is I've seen her name in surface pattern design classes. So she's definitely in our quilting world, fabric world, creative endeavors. And I've listened to her podcast on just kind of, a creative lifestyle, I would say, is more her vibe than any one specific industry. So learning a lot.
I've heard her podcast a few times. She has such a relaxing voice.
Yep.
Oh boy. Okay, my turn. Gosh, the only person I can think of right now is my coworker. Her name is Jamie, and she has been struggling. And this weekend, she let me know that she made a commitment to a side hustle that will actually be profitable and get away from DoorDash. And I feel so proud for her for taking such a huge step and just committing to a different side hustle where she can actually put her skills to use. She has amazing technical skills. And I'm like, why are you doing DoorDash? If you need a side hustle, do this instead. And I kind of encouraged. And she committed and took the leap all on her own. And I'm just so proud of her for that, because I know how hard taking the first step can really be to starting anything. So that's who comes to mind most strongly right now. I think because I just spoke to her this morning a little bit, and I'm just so proud of her.
Yeah, that really is an inspiring story of someone. And I have to admit that I am guilty of that too. You kind of, you think inside the box. You're like, I have to go work for someone else if I'm trying to find a job or have a side hustle. It has to be one of those, DoorDash things. I need to go work the night shift at Walmart, or, something that's established. It's hard and scary to invest in yourself and take that step towards entrepreneurship, especially if you've never had an example in your own family of doing that. So, but luckily there's resources out there, and we hope to be that resource too.
Yes, we inspire more people to do something they love to do. For sure. And be profitable.
That is the ultimate hope. Yeah, we'll have to do a whole nother episode on money mindset, because I think too many people are just saying, um, especially with the thought of making money from your quilt business. Oh, if I just make enough to cover my supplies, that'll be good. No, I want to pay some bills, take that vacation that you talked about.
Yeah, and I mean, even with your teaching, you can go present at guilds. And if you want to travel, it's a great way to get some funds to travel is to present at guilds. Just offer your shows and your programs and your workshops to the guilds where you want to go, and you can pay your way. Like that can be one profitable way to travel. So if you want to hear more from us about quilting on the side with your side hustle, be sure to subscribe and we will talk to you. Hopefully, we are planning on episodes coming out for a season and once a week for that entire season. And from there, we will decide if this is helping. And we would love to hear from you. If you could rate us on our first episode or second episode, or where I don't know,
Whichever
I'm kind of
episode
going
you're
off on a
listening
tangent.
to, drop us a review, subscribe, and we will chat soon.